In June 1998, 12 seniors from a small-town high school boarded a bus for their graduation trip. They never made it home. No wreckage, no calls, no goodbyes, just a straight road through a state forest and silence. For 20 years, their parents left porch lights on. 12 houses, 12 bedrooms untouched, 12 names frozen in time, until a hiker stumbled upon a cabin that shouldn't have existed, and what lay inside rewrote everything. The town was called Briar Glen. Population just over 2,400. The kind of place where every house had a screen door and every front yard had a flag. Class sizes were small, church groups even smaller. Everyone knew everyone, and in the summer of '98, everyone knew the class of 12. They were supposed to be the lucky ones, the generation after the layoffs, the first in years to graduate with full scholarships, job offers, and plans beyond the town line. On the morning of June 3rd, they met at the high school parking lot, backpacks in hand, caps still dangling from rear-view mirrors. The yellow bus arrived at 6:17 a.m., driven by a man named Russell Hagen, a substitute driver. The regular, Mr. Campbell, had called out sick that morning. Russell was quiet, clean record, worked for the district less than a year. No one paid much attention. He waved to the principal, smiled at the parents, helped the students load their gear. At 6:32 a.m., the bus pulled out, headed for a lakeside campground about 2 hours away. It never arrived. By 9 o'clock, the campground staff called the school. By 10 o'clock, the sheriff had issued an alert. By sunset, search teams were combing every road and turnout within a 100-mile radius. They found tire tracks at a gravel fork near Lockland Pines Forest. Then nothing. No crash. No oil slicks. No shattered glass. Just gone. The town unraveled. The 12 families, each one gutted. Posters went up. Candles burned in the church every Sunday. The FBI got involved. Canines, helicopters, every satellite pass reviewed. Still nothing. Some believe the driver had snapped, driven them into the woods, left no trace. Others whispered darker things, that the forest swallowed the bus, that the land beyond the gravel wasn't like the rest, that there was something up there old enough to forget the rules. In 2001, the case was declared cold. 12 names engraved on a memorial outside the school. Ellie Breyer, Sean Maddox, Jonah Carr, Denise Freeman, Emily Rhodes, Ryan Slate, Josh Lynn, Caitlin Harrow, Miguel Ortiz, Jessica Darnell, Andrew Cook, Ava Lee, and one for the driver, Russell Hagen. 13 plaques. 13 empty chairs at homecoming. Time passed. The school rebuilt. Graduation came and went. New students. New names. New pain. But the town never moved on. Because grief doesn't end. It just learns how to be quiet. Then, in September 2018, everything changed. A hiker named Thomas Harlow was following a trail along the Ardenshire Ridge, a path long abandoned since the early 2000s due to landslides. He took a wrong turn, lost GPS signal, wandered off trail for over 3 hours. And that's when he saw it. A cabin, wooden, overgrown, buried in vine. It stood at the edge of a dry creek bed, in a place where no structure should have survived. He approached. Windows fogged, door ajar, inside dust-rot silence. But then, on the far wall, a Briar Glen High School banner, class of 1998, pinned perfectly above the fireplace. Thomas took photos, left immediately, hiked 5 miles to reach cell signal, called the sheriff's office. By midnight, the FBI had reactivated the case. What investigators found over the next 48 hours shattered what little piece the town had found. Inside the cabin were yearbooks, graduation robes, and a Polaroid camera with a full cartridge. On the table, a map hand-drawn of a nearby forest, dozens of excess, one circled in red, and carved into wood of the floor. Beneath the rug, Day 5. We're not alone out here. They dusted for prints, found partial matches to several of the missing students. Not aged, not deteriorated. Fresh, the kind you'd leave a week ago. Not 20 years. No signs of bodies. No bones. No clothing beyond what was folded neatly in a trunk marked Ellie. And no trace of the bus. But there was one more thing. Behind the cabin, buried beneath a rusted tin sheet, a box. Inside, a small stack of letters. And on top, a folded paper labeled in shaky handwriting. For whoever finds us. Inside, this isn't where we were supposed to go, but it's where we ended up. Tell our families we tried to come home, but something followed, and we didn't all stay the same. There's a reason no one remembers the forest the same way. It's because it's remembering us instead. We weren't supposed to leave the bus, but someone opened the door. Lena Cartwright, a junior FBI analyst assigned to the reopened case, wrote in her report, "There is no logical explanation for the condition of the items found. Either someone is staging a decades-old scene with unsettling accuracy, or time moves differently at Ardenshire Ridge." She signed it, dated September 23rd, 2018. The final line of the report was blacked out, but leaked versions suggest it said, "I think we found their footprints, but they're heading in the wrong direction." The cabin was sealed. The investigation quietly expanded. No press conferences, no statements. Just teams in the woods with headlamps and eyes that no longer trusted what they saw. And then, 2 weeks later, someone mailed an envelope to the Briar Glen Police Department. No return address. Inside, a photo, Polaroid, dated September 10th, 1998. In the center, the 12 students, standing in a circle, holding hands. Behind them, a wall of trees, and at the edge of the frame, a hand, not one of theirs. Too long, too dark, too wrong, written on the back. We came back, but not all of us made it through. The town of Briar Glen had not forgotten, not the faces, not the names, not the exact shade of yellow on the bus that left and never returned, but it had buried something. A silence too thick to lift, a knowing too uncomfortable to say out loud. The discovery of the cabin didn't bring relief. It brought something worse. Hope. And hope, after 20 years, doesn't soothe. It scratches. Lena Cartwright arrived in Briar Glen under a fog of secrecy. FBI's official statement called her an analyst, but she'd been given quiet permission to investigate off-book. Follow the story, they told her. But if it gets too strange, walk away. She never had before. Her first stop was a house of Cynthia Maddox, mother of Sean. Sean had been the class clown, quarterback, voted most likely to rule the world. Cynthia hadn't changed a thing in his room. Still had his posters on the wall, his textbooks stacked neatly, his alarm clock unplugged. "Do you think he's still out there?" Lena asked. Cynthia looked up from her tea. "No, I think something else is." She wasn't the only parent who spoke that way. Lena visited 9 homes. 8 of them said the same sentence in different forms. "I don't think they're dead. I think they were changed." When she asked what that meant, no one could say, but there were clues, fragments, and they all led back to Day 5. It was first mentioned in the letter found under the rug in the cabin. Day 5. We're not alone out here. What had happened on day 1 through 4? Why write that and not more? Lena pulled the yearbook from her satchel, studied the 12 faces, and one stuck out. Emily Rhodes, shy, honor student, wrote for the school paper. Lena tracked down Emily's old journalism teacher. Mr. Denton, now retired. He remembered Emily well, said she was curious about things most students ignored. And in May of '98, she had submitted an editorial that never ran. He still had it, folded in a filing box, staying with time. It read, "We think we're walking away from childhood, but sometimes it walks a little further to catch up to us. There's something about this town, about the forest we drive past every day. It's older than us, older than the roads. Maybe the real trip begins when we finally leave." Lena underlined one phrase. It's older than the roads. She drove to the ranger station near Ardenshire Ridge. Asked for maps from before 1950. One ranger in his 70s remembered something, said his father once worked search and rescue up there. Told stories of people going in and looping, finding themselves walking in circles for hours, even days. But that wasn't what disturbed him. It was the fact that GPS still didn't work past certain points. Even in 2018, Lena marked a spot on her map, the red circled X from the one found in the cabin. No road reached it. She packed her gear, left before dawn. The trail narrowed fast, overgrown, steep. She walked 4 miles before reaching a small clearing. There, under a twisted pine, a fire pit, long cold, surrounded by stones. In the ashes, charred scraps of notebook paper. One had a single word burned at the edge. Jonah. She dug around, found a rusted tin box wedged between 2 tree roots. Inside, a folded plastic poncho, a cracked compass, and a cassette tape labeled Day 5, Don't Listen Alone. She took it back to her rental. Found an old cassette player at a pawn shop, popped the tape in. Press play. The recording began with silence. Then wind. Heavy, low, not natural. Then a voice. Breathless. "Male, if anyone finds this, we're on day 5. Something's wrong with the trees. We tried to walk east for 3 hours. Ended up back here. Ryan's gone. He said he saw someone in the woods. Followed them. He came back an hour later, but it wasn't him. He knew our names, but not how we met." A pause. Shuffling. Then, "Emily's been drawing spirals in the dirt. Keeps saying, we're part of the forest now. I think we passed something yesterday. Like a skin. It looked like a deer, but hollow. No organs, no bones, just fur, like something wore it." The voice trembled. "I want to believe this is just panic, that we're lost in imagining things." But Sean found a second sun, high up, flickering like it was behind water. "We're not alone out here. We're not even ourselves." Then a long silence and a final whisper. "Tell him we didn't want to go into the forest." The driver opened the door, but he wasn't Russell anymore. Click. Lena sat frozen, not from fear, from the sound of the voice. She recognized it. It wasn't a stranger. It was Jonah Carr, one of the 12. She replayed the tape, matched it with a video clip from the class time capsule, recorded in April 1998. Same tone. Same rhythm, same hesitation. Jonah, alive, 5 days after the disappearance, which meant they'd made it beyond the road. They'd been somewhere. She pulled out the Polaroid found in the envelope mailed to the police, the one with the 12 students in a circle. At the edge of the frame, the hand, too long, wrong, and behind it, barely visible in the trees, was a second set of eyes, level with the canopy. Too high to be human. Too bright. Reflecting something that wasn't light. She enhanced the image. Zoomed. And there, tucked into the branches, was a shape, one that mirrored a human form, but slightly off, joints too bent, limbs too smooth, skin wrong, not a person, not quite an animal, something mimicking, watching. Lena wrote in her report, Day 5 wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of whatever came next. If they left the bus, then something else took their place in returning. She didn't sleep that night. Dreamed of yellow buses in tall grass, of yearbooks filled with names that didn't match faces, of a compass spinning, never stopping. And when she woke, the cassette player had rewound itself, all the way back to the beginning. But when she pressed play again, it wasn't Jonah's voice this time. It was Emily's, and she said just one thing. Don't listen alone. Emily's voice should not have been on that tape. Jonah's recording was labeled Day 5. And yet, when Lena played it again, Emily was there. Not frantic, not lost, just aware. Don't listen alone. That's all she said. But it wasn't a warning. It was a pattern, something meant to be repeated, or heard by more than one. Lena brought the tape to audio analysis. The lab report confirmed it. 2 separate recordings. Different microphones, spliced together without physical damage to the tape. A second voice laid in after the fact. Impossible for cassette tech of that era. There was no logical explanation. Only this. It recorded something that hadn't happened yet. She stared at the player for a long time, thought about timelines, about memory, about what Emily had written in her journal years earlier. Maybe the real trip begins when we finally leave. Lena returned to the cabin with a fresh search team. She needed more, not just answers, names, or more precisely, a name that didn't belong. The cabin hadn't been disturbed since the first discovery. Still sealed, still quiet. She stepped inside, let her eyes adjust. The yearbooks were still there, same pages, same faces. She flipped to the senior class spread, stared at the photos, row after row of smiling seniors. So it'd be 38 now, if they'd made it past that road. But something caught her eye. A signature on the inside cover, written in red ink, faint from time. Thanks for the memories. T. There was no T among the 12 who vanished. No Tyler. No Tessa. No Theo. She cross-referenced the yearbook. Nothing. No student with a first or last name beginning with T in the class of 98. But someone had signed it anyway, like they'd been there, or like they'd been added later. She called the school district, requested yearbooks from the class of 1999. The grade directly below, the librarian, Mrs. Albee, remembered something odd, said a girl named Sarah Monroe, who should have graduated in 99, transferred away after just a few months of senior year. No notice, no forwarding file. Her last attendance date? September 15th, 1998, 12 weeks after the class disappeared, and 2 days after the date on the Polaroid mailed to police. Lena pulled the photo again, counted the students, 12 in the center, 1 figure behind the trees, and just barely visible in the top corner, a 13th shadow, a girl's silhouette, hair long, dress unfamiliar, smiling. She visited Sarah Monroe's last known address, an old farmhouse 2 miles outside town, boarded up, grass knee-high. Inside on a windowsill sat a photo, covered in dust. Lena wiped it. It was of Sarah, but the back read, Summer 98, before everything changed. She brought the photo to town records, filed a search on Sarah Monroe. Nothing. No taxes. No ID renewals. No job history. Just stopped, Then one last record. A psychiatric admission under the alias T. Martin, dated January 2000. Discharged 6 months later. No forwarding information. But one quote from her intake note stood out. They remember me wrong. Lena traced the lead to Riverview Mental Health, now defunct. The records had been moved to storage in the county archive. She requested access. Found the box. Inside, a patient file. T. Martin, age 19. Underlined twice in red. Presented with identity dissociation. Claims to have lived multiple lives. Remembers events she should not have witnessed. The file included journal entries from therapy sessions. One read, "They say I didn't go on the bus, but I remember the trees. I remember day 5. I remember Emily's drawings. They changed, and so did I, but no one noticed. The ones who didn't belong started to fit in." She turned the page. Another entry. I came back with her name, but not her face. She wanted to stay, so I took her place. Lena nearly dropped the file, because that handwriting matched the red signature in the yearbook. Thanks for the memories. T. She flipped through the 1999 class photo again, found Sarah Monroe's face. Only, it wasn't. It looked like her, but not quite. Eyes off-center. Smile too wide, like someone was wearing her, trying to replicate her. She scanned the image with facial mapping software. It returned a 78% match to Emily Rhodes, which should be impossible. Emily was declared missing in 1998, but her features were replicated, mimicked, as if someone came back trying to pass as someone else. She wrote in her report, if this person returned, they didn't return whole, or they didn't return as themselves. The bus didn't vanish. It split. She returned to the cabin. One last search. This time, she noticed something inside the floorboards, loose wood panel near the fireplace. She pried it open. Inside, a journal. Black cover. Water damaged. First page missing. But the rest were filled with sketches, spirals, trees, eyes, figures with arms too long and mouths missing. And on the last page, we heard a name whisper in the woods. Not ours, but it answered when we spoke it. It took Ryan, then gave someone back. They looked like him, sounded like him, but they didn't sleep, and their shadow didn't bend. Lena closed the journal. Outside, the wind picked up, and for a moment, she swore she heard voices. Not yelling, not crying, just laughing. Teenagers, far off, from somewhere just beyond the trees. She turned, but there was no one there, only her own shadow, long and silent, and in the dirt, footprints, fresh, leading away from the cabin. 12 sets, and one more, barefoot. The ground was soft, but not from rain. It had that strange give, the kind you feel in a dream, when you're not sure if the earth will catch you or consume you, and in that softness, bare footprints, fresh. 12 pairs moved as a group, but the 13th trailed behind, slower, lighter, bare. Lena followed. The forest didn't resist her footsteps, but it didn't welcome them either. Birds were gone. Even the wind held its breath, like the trees weren't just watching. They were remembering. Half a mile from the cabin, she found the clearing, and in the center, an old stone slab buried waist-deep in moss. A carving along its edge. Not a name, not a date, a spiral. But this one was cracked, split down the center, as if something once sealed had burst from beneath. She brushed away the leaves. Underneath, a name, carved in sharp, frantic letters. Ellie Breyer. Lena's heart skipped. Ellie, The first name on the memorial plaque back in town. Head cheerleader, honor student, vanished with the others. But she'd never been listed as separate. There was never any sign she'd broken from the group. So why was her name carved alone? She turned around. The trees loomed, and for a second, she felt them lean in, not with malice, but with a kind of curiosity, like a mirror being tilted toward her. She made her way back. That night in her motel, she finally opened the seal file. The original 1998 FBI case folder. Classified, redacted, until now. Inside were the standard pages. Search maps, family statements, timeline breakdowns. But at the back, a section labeled Unconfirmed Testimonies, 4 pages, each typed on a different typewriter. No names, no signatures, just brief interviews with people who claimed to see the bus after it vanished. Testimony number 1. I was walking the fire trail west of Route 6. I saw the yellow bus parked off-road. Lights were on. No driver. Kids were standing in a circle outside. I called out. No one answered. They didn't look at me. When I turned around and looked back, it was gone. Testimony number 2. Heard voices in the forest. Sounded like laughing, maybe crying. Saw a boy running. No shoes, no shirt, looked confused. When I yelled, he stopped, stared at me, then his face changed. He copied mine, then kept running. Testimony number 3. I know what I saw. The bus was empty, except for one girl, blonde, sitting in the back. She waved at me, but her hand moved wrong, like it wasn't attached. Lena's breath caught. She flipped back to the carved stone. Ellie Breyer, blonde, back seat. She cross-checked the map coordinates of each testimony, all within a 10-mile loop, except one. Testimony number 4. Woke up in my tent middle of the night, saw lights in the trees, heard an engine, followed it, found the bus, door open, fog inside. There was a girl inside, said she was looking for someone. I asked who. She said, the one who remembers the forest. When I blinked, she was gone. Lena underlined it. The one who remembers the forest. She stared out the window. The motel parking lot was still, but she could feel something shift. Not in the sky. Inside her. That night, she dreamt of the bus. It was empty, idling at the edge of a lake. All windows fogged. Inside, 12 backpacks, neatly lined up. And at the front, sitting behind the wheel, herself. She woke with her hand on her chest, like she'd forgotten how to breathe, opened her notebook, and found something she didn't write. A single line, scrawled in her own handwriting. If you see your name written in the forest, don't read it out loud. She hadn't told anyone about the carved stone, not even her supervisor. No one knew. So, who had written that? She traced a sentence with her finger, and for a split second, she heard laughter outside her window. Teenage, joyful. Then it stopped. She got dressed, drove to the site of the old fire trail, walked until her legs ached. The forest opened again. Same curve, same tilt of light. And there, where the trail dipped into the gully, another stone. Same spiral, same moss. She knelt, wiped it clean. No name, just 2 words. Almost home. She stood, felt eyes behind her, turned. Nothing. Only the trees, only the spiral, still spinning quietly in her chest. She drove back to town, stopped by the school, asked for access to archive materials from 1998. The librarian pulled a box labeled Senior Projects. Inside, poster boards, journals, videotapes, and one folder, marked Jonah Carr, Anthropology Final, Local Myth and Memory. She opened it. Inside, drawings, maps, diagrams, and a journal titled The Forgetting Ground. Jonah had been researching the forest around Ardenshire Ridge, claimed local tribes avoided the area for centuries, called the place that doesn't echo. He wrote, "Stories say names vanish here. You speak and nothing returns. You shout and nothing answers. Some believe the forest didn't take lives. It took histories." Lena flipped to the last page. A list of names. All 12. At the bottom, one final note. "If someone remembers me, tell them I never stopped listening." She closed the journal, heart racing, turned to leave the library. And then, just outside the glass door, she saw a girl standing by the flagpole. Long blonde hair, blue jacket, back turned. Lena pushed the door open, walked quickly. The girl didn't move, didn't flinch. "Excuse me," Lena said. The girl turned, and her face was Ellie's, but too smooth, too still, like a wax figure learning how to smile. "Ellie," the girl blinked once, then leaned forward and whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." Lena staggered, backed away, but the girl was gone. Only the breeze remained, only the spiral buzzing behind her ribs. That night, Lena listened to the tape again, and when she turned up the volume during the final seconds, she heard her own name, spoken by a voice that hadn't existed in 1998, a voice that belonged to no one. "Lena Cartwright, you remember too much." The spiral showed up again, not in the forest, not in a dream, not scrawled into tree bark or whispered on old cassette tape. This time, it was printed in blue ink on a substitute bus driver assignment form from May 1998. Lena had gone to the Briar Glen School District office to track down more information on Russell Hagen, the man who drove the bus the morning the students vanished. His file had always been thin. Too thin. One application. 2 months of clean attendance. No incident reports. But tucked in the back of the cabinet, she found a folder marked "Temp Drivers, Summer 98, Finalized." Inside, dozens of routine assignments. Then one form, unlike the rest. Hagen's. It was typed, clean, but in the notes section, one line had been written in blue pen. Route must follow the original path. Avoid reflection points. And beneath it, a spiral, drawn perfectly, as if someone had practiced it again and again. Lena stared at the page. That spiral hadn't been in any official documentation. It wasn't part of the school, the district, or any map. It belonged only to the forest, to them. She dug deeper, pulled archive driver logs, found Hagen's file was created in April 1998. No record of where he came from, no previous employer. The background check? Blank, but his reference contact was listed as S. Maddox, emergency approval. Cynthia Maddox, Sean's mother. Lena called her, asked if she'd ever approved Russell Hagen. Cynthia's voice was brittle. "That man wasn't from here. I never signed anything." But Sean, he said he'd seen the driver before, years before. Lena hung up, sat in her car, opened the spiral notebook she now carried with her at all times. In the margins, she begun sketching, not meaning to, just absent-mindedly. Always the same shape, always that spiral, and at the center, a circle with 13 dots. She returned to the school, asked for access to archive yearbooks from the 1970s. The librarian was reluctant. A lot was lost in the fire. What fire? Jim stage caught. Whole back storage went up in 93. Any photos saved? Some, but not everything. The librarian led her to the basement. Dim, cold, smelled like paper and mildew. She pulled a box labeled Class Photos, 1969 to 1980. Inside, black and white 8x10s. Some warped from water damage. Others sealed in plastic. Lena flipped through quickly, then stopped. A class labeled Briar Glen, class of 1973. 13 students, 12 standing, 1 seated. Their faces, not right, smiles off, hands too straight, posture too stiff, like they were posing for something that wasn't a camera. She flipped the photo. On the back, written in shaky pencil, only 12 graduated. And beneath that, the 13th didn't come home. She stared at the photo again. The girl seated in the middle wore a necklace with a charm, a spiral. Lena copied the student names, cross-checked them against town records. 8 had death certificates. 2 had moved away, but 3, no trace, no record they ever existed, not even birth certificates. She brought the photo to Simon, her only off-book contact back at the bureau. He scanned it through an AI match database. 2 names returned hits. 1, disturbingly familiar, Russell Hagen, not as a driver, as a student. Graduated from Briar Glen in 1973, but that would make him 45 when he applied in 1998. His driver's license said 33. No explanation, no corrections. The face matched, but the age didn't. He didn't come back as himself, Lena whispered. Or he came back again. Back at the school, Lena requested access to the old theater space. What remained of it after the '93 fire? The vice principal hesitated, said it hadn't been used since the fire, and the trapdoor to the understage area was sealed. She insisted. They let her in. Dust covered everything. Half of the stage floor had been replaced, but the far left corner still had the original boards. And near the wall, a sealed trapdoor. Old chain across it, padlock rusted. She pried it open. Beneath, a staircase, spiral, downward. She climbed into the dark, flashlight flickering. The air was thick. Still, at the bottom, a room, walls lined with student desks. 13, all facing inward. A circle. In the center, a metal chair, bolted to the floor. On the desk directly across from her, a photo album. She opened it. Each page was blank, until the last one. A single photo glued in. The class of 1998. The same 12 faces, same forest backdrop, but standing among them was a 13th, face turned slightly, hair pulled back, hands behind her back. Lena leaned closer. It was a girl, wearing a dark sweater, a bracelet she recognized. Her own. The face was hers. Lena, at age 8, standing among the vanished seniors. In a photo dated June 3rd, 1998, she stumbled back, dropped the album. Something shifted behind her. A breath. She turned, but the room was still. Only the chair creaked gently. She climbed back to the surface, locked the trapdoor, didn't speak to anyone, just drove, past the edge of town, past the cabin, to the lake, where the bus was never found. She stood at the shoreline, threw a rock, watched the ripples, and as they faded, something surfaced. Just for a second, a glint, metallic, then it sank again. She took out her notebook, wrote one sentence. The bus never crashed. It crossed. Her phone buzzed. Blocked number. She answered. Silence. Then static. Then a voice. A child's. Her own. Don't forget your seat. Click. The voice on the other end had been her own. Not how she sounded now. Not even how she remembered herself. Younger. more innocent, more hollow. Don't forget your seat. Then nothing. Lena sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the blank screen of her phone. There was no missed call, no voicemail, no record it had rung. She placed the phone down, slipped on her coat, and drove back to the lake. It was nearly midnight when she reached the water. The forest was still, so quiet it hurt. She stood at the shoreline. The moon above her full reflected across the black surface like a fractured mirror. Something had surfaced earlier, a glint, a memory, and she needed to know what it was. She changed into her thermals, zipped her waterproof jacket, and stepped into the freezing shallows. The shock bit her skin. She didn't hesitate, waited until the lake lifted her. Then she dove. The water closed over her head. Sound disappeared. Everything muted, except for her own heartbeat and the low, distant hum, like something thrumming in the lake bed itself. She swam downward, fingers trailing over reeds and stones. Then metal. Her hand struck it, cold, rounded. She surfaced, gasping, then dove again. This time, her flashlight cut through the silt, and there, wedged between two submerged boulders, was a fragment of yellow paneling, bent, peeling, barely visible, a section of the bus, and scratched into its surface, deep and uneven, were still inside. She backed away, kicked to the surface. As she emerged, a breeze whispered across the lake. She could swear it carried voices. A name, not hers. Sean, Emily, then silence. She pulled herself ashore, collapsing into the grass. The cold clung to her bones. But something else had followed her out, clutched in her hand, tangled in weeds, was a charm bracelet with 12 tiny beads and a broken link. She returned to her motel and placed the bracelet on a nightstand. But it didn't sit still. It trembled, slightly, as if still remembering who had worn it. The next morning, she met with Howard Elkins, former Briar Glen councilman, retired, nearly 80, lived alone. She asked if he remembered anything unusual before the class of '98 vanished. He didn't answer immediately, then nodded. You ever heard of the class of '58? Lena shook her head. Didn't think so. Most people haven't. He pulled out a faded manila folder from a locked drawer. Inside, a black and white class photo, newspaper clippings, and one chilling flyer. 6 students missing, last seen near Lockland Pines. The story never ran statewide. Town kept it quiet. Said they got lost on a camping trip. But I was a junior then. I remember the day they left. I remember the bus. Only 6 were reported, but 7 went. One girl wasn't from our school. No one knew her name, but she smiled the widest in the photo. Lena examined the image. A girl at the end of the row, wearing a charm bracelet identical to the one now on her nightstand. She asked Howard what happened next. He just whispered. We stopped asking questions. She took the documents, drove back to the school. Inside the old stage trapdoor, she found what she didn't know she was looking for. The desks were as she'd left them. But now, on the metal chair in the center, sat a new item. An envelope. No dust. No decay. As if just placed there. Written in red ink. L. Cartwright. Her name. Not typed. Not printed. Written by hand. She opened it. Inside, a photograph. Full color. Crisp. A girl standing in the woods. Wearing a dark coat. Back to the camera. Face turned slightly. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Because it was her. Older. Not as she was now, but as she hadn't yet become. The back of the photo read, Briar Glen, October 2025. It was 2018. She flipped the photo again. looked closely. Behind her in the image, 13 shadows, standing between the trees. Too thin, too tall, unmoving. She staggered back. The floor beneath her creaked. The spiral in her chest spun. Faster now, like a clock winding in reverse. She left the stage, rushed into the sunlight. But the warmth didn't help. Not when memory was bending. Not when time was folding. That night, she tried to call Simon. No answer. She tried again. The number was out of service. She emailed. The message bounced back. She checked internal bureau logs. He had been reassigned 3 months ago to a project that didn't exist. The bracelet on her nightstand had rearranged itself. The beads now formed a shape, a spiral, one bead missing. The 13th. She left the motel before dawn, drove toward the far edge of Ardenshire Ridge, past the fire trail, past where the signal died. She parked, walked the rest of the way. By noon, she reached a clearing she hadn't seen on any map. At the center, a patch of soil, soft, dark, fertile, and growing from it, a spiral of moss, not drawn, not carved, grown, alive, pulsing. She knelt beside it, placed her hand on the earth, felt it rise to meet her palm, and as it did, a voice echoed behind her, whispered from the trees, "We've saved your seat." She turned, but there was no one, only her shadow, and beside it, a second one, not hers, taller, thinner, motionless, waiting. The second shadow didn't move. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. It only waited, as if it had always been there, not walking behind her, but waiting ahead of her. Lena stood in the clearing, the spiral of moss pulsing beneath her hand, alive, warm, like memory with a heartbeat. Then the shadow tilted its head, not toward her, toward the soil, as if listening. She stepped back, but the moss moved, shifted, and something beneath the surface pushed upward. It wasn't a plant, not a bone, not a photograph. It was a key, iron, thin, tied with red thread, attached to a tag. 13th locker, BGH, Briar Glen High. She took the key, clutched it like it might disappear. The shadow across from her mimicked the movement, lifted its hand, though there was nothing in it, then pointed west, toward the oldest part of the forest. Lena turned, and the shadow was gone. Back at her car, she checked the locker's location. Locker number 13 had been sealed after the fire in 1993. The old wing, never reopened, declared structurally unstable. She waited until dusk, then broke in. The hallway was silent. Floorboards bent under her weight. Every step felt wrong, like she was walking on someone else's memory. She found the locker, number 13. Paint peeled, slight dent in the middle, as if something inside had once pushed out. She inserted the key. It turned with a soft click. Inside, a box, wooden, unmarked, and a single page taped to the interior wall. If you remember too much, you start to dissolve. She opened the box. Inside, a school ID badge, Jonah Carr, but the photo wasn't him. Same name, same ID number, but a different face. Older, hair shorter, eyes unfamiliar. Beneath it, a cassette, labeled in blocky handwriting. Day 9, return. She slid it into her recorder. Press play. This time there was no static, only breathing. Slow, measured, then Jonah's voice. Tired, heavier than before. This is the 9th day. I don't know who's left. We keep finding versions of ourselves. Sometimes dead, sometimes laughing. None of them real. Ellie says she hears the spiral talking now. It tells her who to become. I think we're past remembering. We're being written. Silence. Then one of us left. Walked back. Said she'd tell them what happened. But when we watched her go, she had the wrong eyes. We followed her shadow. It split halfway. We never saw her again. Lena paused the tape. Checked the timestamp. The recording was dated June 13th, 1998. 10 days after the bus vanished. She pressed play again. A second voice joined. Emily. Clear. Focused. If you're hearing this, you need to stop following the spiral. It doesn't want you to remember. It wants you to forget so well that it can fill the space you leave behind. We try to stay human, but the spiral only wants reflections, then static, then nothing. She sat back on the cold tile floor, looked at Jonah's ID again. The face looked familiar, too familiar. It looked like the man she'd passed on the trail days ago, the one who didn't speak, the one who watched her. But it couldn't have been. He would have been 38 by now. This face was maybe 20. She turned the ID over, etched in faint pen. Second cycle. Not me. Not anymore. The forest didn't just take them. It replicated. She left the school, drove without knowing where she was going. Her body moved on instinct until the trees returned, until the spiral in her chest pulsed like a second heart. She reached the cabin, but something was different. The door, once sealed, stood open. Inside, candles flickered. Fresh, and sitting at the table, was a girl, wearing a hoodie 2 sizes too large. Head down, hand shaking. Lena stepped inside slowly. Hello. The girl didn't move until Lena stepped closer. And then she looked up. It was Emily Rhodes, exactly as she'd looked in 1998. No older, no paler, eyes just as wide, just as haunted. Emily? I waited, she said softly. You remembered. How are you here? I never left. Lena sat across from her, words caught in her throat. The others? Some stayed, some returned, some were overwritten. What does that mean? Emily didn't answer, just looked down. I saw my mother on TV. She was older, but she didn't know me. She reached into her coat, pulled out a small photograph. It showed the inside of the bus. Empty, seats torn, windows fogged, but scratched into the ceiling. Emily plus Lena equals? Lena's hand trembled. She didn't remember ever being on the bus. Not with her. Not with any of them. Why is my name there? Emily looked up. Because you were always one of us. No, I wasn't. The forest didn't take you. It kept you somewhere else. Until now. The window behind them fogged. A spiral drew itself across the glass. Outside, shadows gathered in the trees. Not moving, just watching. Emily stood, walked to the back of the cabin, opened a drawer, pulled out a file, labeled October 2025, final draft. Inside, a photo, a map, a page of typed names. She handed Lena the photo. It showed the inside of the cabin. This very room. Same table. Same candle. And Lena sitting in Emily's seat. Alone. What is this? Emily didn't answer. She walked to the door. Opened it. Wind rushed in. And from the forest, a voice. Not one. Many. Layered. Repeating the same sentence. We remember for you. Lena turned. Looked at the paper. At the bottom of the typed list. 12 names from the class of 1998. Then one more. In red. Cartwright Lena. Accepted late return. She looked at Emily. What happens next? Emily stepped outside. You choose. Lena followed her, but the clearing was empty. No footprints, no spiral in the grass, only the sound of something deeper, below the roots. Breathing, she walked back toward her car, stopped halfway, because carved into the bark of the oldest tree, nearly 10 feet up, was her name, Lena Cartwright, and beneath it, October 15th, 2025, a date that hadn't come yet. She placed her palm against the tree, felt warmth, not bark, not wood, but skin. The tree pulsed, like it remembered her, or was about to. The tree pulsed beneath her hand, not with wind, not with movement, but with memory, alive, awake, waiting. Her name carved in the bark wasn't weathered. It was fresh, not from the past, from the future. October 15th, 2025. It was still 2018, but time, out here, no longer obeyed. Lena stepped back. The spiral buzzed behind her ribs again, louder than it had ever been. She turned in slow circles. The woods watched, still, endless. Every tree a page, every path a sentence left unfinished. She returned to the car. The bracelet sat in the front seat. She hadn't brought it with her. 12 beads still. But now, one of them was cracked. She drove, not toward town, not toward the motel, toward the ridge, back where it began. The road narrowed. The canopy closed in. She turned on the headlights. But the darkness ahead remained black, like it didn't want to be illuminated. She parked beside the old marker, the one the map circled in red, walked on foot the rest of the way. And then, deep in the pines, she saw it again. The bus, or what remained of it, rust-lined, sunken, but intact, paint long faded. One window cracked open. She stepped closer. Each step felt wrong, like she was retracing a mistake she hadn't yet made. The door creaked as she pulled it open. A gust of warm air hit her. Not rot, not decay, but breath, memory, like the bus had exhaled. Inside, dust, old paper, and something else. Scratches, etched into the seats. On the floor, along the backs of headrests. Jonah, we tried. Day 6. Not him. Emily, stop asking. We never left. She moved to the back. Seat 13. Corner left. The cushion was torn. Inside, a journal, water-warped. She opened it. Expected one of the students' names. But the front page read, Russell Hagen, the bus driver. She sat, began to read. I was told this was a one-time route, a quiet job, but the route didn't match the map. We weren't on the state road after mile 12. It looped. The signs repeated. Emily asked me about the spiral. I hadn't seen it. Then I looked in the mirror. All 12 of them, staring forward, smiling. They weren't talking, but their mouths were moving. Same words, over and over. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Lena turned the page. At mile 19, the engine stopped. We coasted into the trees. They stepped off one by one, but something stayed behind. Something stepped in, and I didn't stop it. A Polaroid was tucked between the pages. Of Russell, eyes hollow, mouth open like he was mid-sentence. And behind him, 12 students, standing in a ring. But none of them had faces, only spirals, drawn like masks. She closed the journal. Something moved outside. A figure. Lena stepped down from the bus. The forest shimmered, like heat waves, like memory uncoiling. And walking up the hill, barefoot in a hoodie, was Emily. Again, you found the journal. Lena nodded. Why was he chosen? because he wouldn't fight it. Fight what? The forgetting. Emily sat beside her on the ground. It doesn't take everyone. Only those who remember in the wrong direction. What does that mean? You look backward too long. Eventually, it looks back. Lena pulled out the bracelet. Emily took it, turned it in her hand. One cracked. Does that mean someone broke through? Emily shook her head. No, it means someone broke. That seat is open now. The trees rustled, for the first time in days. Or years. Or minutes. Time had stopped making sense. Emily stood. You need to see one more thing. They walked together. Deeper. Beyond where even the maps dared mark. To a grove. 13 stones. Arranged in a spiral. At the center, a tree. Twisted. Bleached. And hanging from it, dozens of IDs. Photos. Yearbook clippings. Lena's face among them. But not as she was now. Older. Different. Each one stamped. Replaced. What is this? Lena whispered. A ledger, Emily said, of who's come back and who didn't. How can I be on there? Emily pointed at the farthest tree. Another carving. Same handwriting. Lena Cartwright. Returned twice. You were one of us before, she said. You just forgot. That's not possible. Isn't it? Emily asked. You remember too well. You came too close. That's how it begins. Lena's knees buckled. She sat in the dirt. Emily knelt beside her, held her hand. There are always 13 chairs. The spiral doesn't take. It trades. Then what am I? Emily didn't answer, just reached into her pocket, pulled out another Polaroid. Lena took it. It was a photograph taken from behind the school stage, facing the 13 desks, all empty, except one, hers, already occupied. The date scrawled across the top. October 15th, 2025, fill complete. She looked up. Emily was gone again. Only the forest remained, breathing, and somewhere within it, a voice, gentle, patient, familiar. Come home. She didn't remember walking back to the cabin. Only the wind, only the weight of the bracelet in her pocket. 12 beads, one cracked, and the 13th, hers now. The trees didn't part for her. They simply remembered her shape and let her pass. The spiral in her chest no longer spun wildly. It beat like a second pulse. Not foreign, familiar, not a wound, a mark. The cabin door creaked open before she reached it. Inside, candles, the table, one chair, not 13, just one. The seat that had always been waiting. On the table, a single object. Her notebook, pages filled with sketches. Her handwriting, except the first page bore a date. October 16th, 2025, after return. The next sentence read, Memory is a place, and I've lived there before. She sat down, opened the last page. A map, not of the forest, but of the spiral itself, with paths, gates, exits, and at the center, a dot labeled Lena, and beneath it, still remembering. The wind outside changed, a soft keening, like voices through fog. Then the door opened, and one by one, they entered, the class of 1998. All 12, not as they'd been, but as they might have become. Ellie, Sean, Emily, Jonah, alive, tired, eyes older than their faces. They circled her, not threatening, not joyful, just present, holding something between them, a photograph, the last one, the one that had always been missing, the group photo taken the morning of the trip, but with 13 faces, Lena included. Smiling. Already there. Jonah spoke first. We weren't supposed to forget. Emily followed. But someone had to hold the memory. Sean nodded. It has to be someone who can still be seen. Lena shook her head. I don't understand. Ellie stepped forward. You were always meant to come back. You just didn't know which side you were on. She looked down at the bracelet. The cracked bead had been replaced. Now a small silver charm. A spiral. Complete. Oh! Jonah placed a photo on the table. When the last seat is filled, the spiral sleeps. Emily whispered, but it dreams. Always dreams. Lena stood. The others faded. Not vanished. Just lifted. Like breath. Like smoke. Like memory finally let go. Outside, the wind stopped. The forest sighed. For the first time in 20 years, it was quiet. She walked toward the trail, and there at the edge stood a second version of her. Older, the Lena from the photograph. She stared back and nodded once. You made it, Lena said. The other smiled. We both did. Then faded. She drove back to town. No road signs looped. No shadows whispered. Briar Glen welcomed her, like it had always known. She'd return. She stopped at the memorial. 13 names. She traced hers with her finger. And someone had added a final line at the bottom. Returned. Remembered. Released. She walked into the high school. The librarian smiled. Offered her a job. Said they'd been needing someone to keep the archives in order. Lena accepted. She unpacked her things. Placed the bracelet in the drawer. Hung the class of 1998 photo behind her desk, and in her notebook, on the final blank page, she wrote, they weren't lost. They were held, and now they can rest. Sometimes, when the air is just right, and the window is left open, she hears the sound of a bus engine, far off, turning around a bend that no longer exists. She smiles, closes the window, and turns off the light, because some roads don't loop forever. Some names come home, and some spirals close. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Tell me where in the world you're watching, and what time the truth found you.